Has there been a royal snub for Harry and Meghan? What's up with the new royal mix and match? Is Andrew effectively under house arrest? We've got all that and more to come on another packed show. Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential. I'm Jo Elvin, and back to discuss all the week's stories are the Daily Mail's royal editor Rebecca English and the paper's diary editor Richard Eden. Welcome to you both, everyone's favourite dream team. But a reminder that if you don't already, do make sure you subscribe to our channel and never miss another episode. Now, Rebecca, let's start with one of your many stories this week. She never stops working. A new twist in Andrew's housing dilemma.
This was an interesting one, I thought, actually. So I was told by what I believe is pretty impeccable sources that there is a lot of building work going on at Royal Lodge, necessary building work, but over the summer it's going to need its roof redone. Now, Royal Lodge has 7 bedrooms, a mere 7 bedrooms over 2 floors at the top of the building. So Andrew has been advised that actually it probably would be easier if he moved out for a few weeks while it's been done. He has said he doesn't want to move out because he's worried if he goes out, he'll never get back in again.
Is that true?
I don't know whether it was said in seriousness or in jest. Maybe it was probably a jokey, remark. But I think it does highlight just how difficult the situation is. Everyone wants him out of there, and he doesn't want to leave.
Richard, this is extraordinary.
I can't believe relations between Prince Andrew and his brother King Charles are so bad that he kind of fears, Charles bringing the workmen in immediately to get rid of him. It is a sad reflection on how things are and how sort of precarious the situation is about Andrew's housing. Well,
and also from what we hear, there doesn't seem to be much dialogue between the King and Andrew. Is that fair to say?
Well, I think, from everything I hear, it's that Andrew doesn't want to move. He doesn't see why he should. He spent all his money doing up Royal Lodge. He had a 75-year lease. It was meant to be his home for life for him and his family. Obviously, the Duchess of York lives there as well. His daughter's a regular guest. Why should he move? So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. But the idea of him not leaving is also interesting because Andrew doesn't travel much these days, obviously, and there were reports that he was reluctant to visit America in case, the FBI wanted to question him to do with their investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and obviously Andrew's old friend Ghislaine Maxwell, who was jailed for people trafficking.
Wow. What do you make of that, Rebecca?
Well, going back to your point about the dialogue between the brothers, I do think they talk. I don't think that it's not that they're speaking. They're not the kind of family, even though Charles is at Windsor a lot, they just don't pop in for a cup of tea and see each other. You kind of book these appointments in advance. But, I think they're going to be seeing each other next week, for example. But there was a story a few weeks ago, wasn't there, in I think, the Mail on Sunday and some other newspapers, that Andrew feared that they were going to cut his utilities off. Again, I don't think any of this stuff will actually happen because I don't think they can by law. He's a legitimate tenant, but obviously massive pressure is being heaped on him to quit.
I should point out that obviously Prince Andrew has denied any allegations of wrongdoing strenuously, but has the King really got the energy to mess around with, sort of like changing the locks as soon as he leaves for a game of bowls or something? What the hell?
Well, he's got the
Game
whole...
of golf.
Yeah, sorry, golf. Just trying to think, what does an idle prince do?
He has his own golf course there, so yeah.
Well, the King does have this thorny questions of the, the royal housing, who's going to live where. Obviously, they've essentially evicted Harry and Meghan. They're leaving next month from their cottage in Windsor. So I think the idea was they were hoping that Andrew would move into Frogmore Cottage. He doesn't want to do so. It's a sort of headache. Pretty minor one perhaps, but because it's between the siblings, it is awkward.
It does make one wish they were a fly on the wall when he was seen out with Edward this week, wasn't he? So at least some of the siblings we know are talking. This
is really interesting. These were photographs of Andrew out riding in Windsor Great Park with his younger brother Edward. It's Edward maybe practicing his horse riding ahead of this Saturday when he's going to be riding in the Trooping the Colour ceremony for the first time.
Yes.
Obviously he's a good rider anyway, but what's important is they knew they were going to be photographed. They often are when they're out in this public place. And I think it's Edward showing his solidarity with his brother. It's not the first time he's been pictured with him. We know that Princess Anne, their sister's sympathetic to Andrew too. So for me, it really does illustrate the great problems the king would have if he did try to force anything on Andrew. You know, it's such a different situation to how it was with Queen Elizabeth when, you know, she was the mother, she could kind of tell her children to do something and they would have to respect that. But when it's one sibling against the others, it's a whole different dynamic.
It is a different dynamic. But meanwhile, Rebecca, Anne is out with the king today.
They are. I really like this because I love the thought of Princess Anne being her brother's wingwoman. And today they're at Buckingham Palace together. They're taking part in a military ceremony, handing over to the Blues and Royals, of which she is colonel, their new sovereign standard, a head of trooping the colour. But they're going to be there together. And I always think there's a great dynamic with Charles and Anne. And I was thinking about this the other day. You know, let's not forget, it was just them two as siblings for a long time. They do have a really close bond. There was quite a big gap between them and Andrew and Edward. So I think they do have a particularly unique bond. And you know, let's face it, Anne has really never put a foot wrong and probably never will. So.
And Richard, we've seen the Prince of Wales with Sophie Essex this week. It's like it's a royal mix and match. Do they sort of like just getting the names out of a tombola and like putting them together at various random functions?
This is really interesting. It was an event, it was a film screening at the old Battersea Power Station, which is a very swanky new tourist attraction.
Not that far from here.
No, and so it was a wildlife documentary, very powerful. It's all about the fight against poaching of rhinos in South Africa. And Prince William paid tribute to one of the rangers who'd been killed. I mean, this is a nasty business and serious stuff, and the work that William does with these charities is really valuable. Well, Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, went with him. It was quite unusual, and it was interesting to see them together. And she's very interested in conservation too, so it seemed a natural one for her to attend. I must say, since this story was published, like on social media, I've been bombarded with messages from Harry and Meghan fans that are saying, "Oh, this shows that, you know, William doesn't want to do engagements with his wife. They must have problems in their marriage." You know, let me say that's nonsense. You know, they often Catherine doesn't accompany William on engagements. They like to do separate ones, and I think they thought it would be nice for Sophie, his aunt, to join him because of her interest in the subject. But no, it's nothing to do with the state of William and Catherine's marriage.
And it's also worth emphasising the reason why they do that is A, because they're quite respectful of each other's big passions, and B, the kids as well, and they always try to make sure that one of them is around to do the school run at some point during the day. They want to be hands-on parents, and they can't do it if both of them are there doing a job in the evening.
Perfectly normal household arrangement, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, before we get to your comments, a little word on our outfits. Yes, we get a lot of lovely comments and questions from you, some not so lovely, but we'll gloss over those, about what we're wearing. So we're going to try putting some of those details in the info below so you can find out more that way. So let's hear some of your comments now, and on the topic of the Princess Royal playing a role in managing the family on behalf of the King. Marblehead, great name, writes, "I like the idea of Anne as a companion in managing the family with Charles, loving and sensible and straightforward." And after our discussion on Harry's court case last week, Joni Goodrose says that Harry needs to find a way to put the past behind him and start to look forward. She adds that if he continues down this path, he runs the risk of really being seen as embittered, petty, and a very selfish man. And that she hopes for the sake of his children, he gets some real help. Goodness, strong words. Meanwhile, Rosemary Monty wonders if Harry's legal case will make the King reconsider how he deals with his younger son. She says that Harry wants to be part of the royal family with all the benefits and none of the work. Being part means you take the good with the bad, i.e. media interest, and the interest of the people of the United Kingdom. And reminds us that it's the people of the UK who decide when and if the monarchy continues. Always fascinating to hear from you, so please do keep those comments coming in. Well, sticking with Prince Harry for now, and let's get back to my panel. Richard, we'll start this section with a story of yours that the Sussexes will not be at this weekend's Trooping the Colour. What's that all about?
This is really interesting because you know, Trooping the Colour is a huge event. It's traditionally been one where the extended royal family get together. Up until the pandemic, we always had loads of them squeezing onto that palace balcony for the fly past afterwards.
Well, it's going to be very hot for that this year.
Yeah, no, it really will be. But this is the first year of his life that, you know, Harry hasn't been invited at all. You know, we've always had, with Harry and Meghan, we've always had a sort of will they, won't they before every big royal occasion. Well, it seems like the palace has tackled this time by just not inviting them at all. So, you know, it's significant. When Harry and Meghan quit royal duties, I think officials were very keen to stress that they would still be invited to occasions such as Trooping the Colour. So the fact they haven't been invited is very significant.
Rebecca, obviously we all know this occasion is a huge deal for the royal family, so it does feel like a big omission, but is it something that maybe Harry didn't want to be at?
Well, I'm not sure about that, because actually the military was something Harry was really passionate about. I mean, he's, you know, served 10 years in the army, 2 frontline, you know, tours of Afghanistan. He's put the military at the forefront of his work when he was a member of the royal family, with his patronages and his Invictus, and they were obviously the patronages that he really fought to cling on to after he and Meghan quit. So I can imagine it would be a real come down. But of course, when Queen Elizabeth said, "You're much loved members of the family, and there's an open invitation to family events," you know, that was what, 2-3 years ago. You know, a lot of water has passed under the bridge since then. When you think about, you know, the interviews, Spare, the Netflix documentary, a lot has been said and done since then. And I think we're in a very different situation now. And if they were to come, there would be so much focus on them and the body language and the interaction with people on the balcony, that it would take away from the fact that this is a really big event for the King as his first official trooping.
Well, speaking of the King, Richard, he's always said to have been keeping the door open to Harry, but this would suggest that maybe it's just slightly ajar rather than open.
I mean, remember that they came last year. Trooping the Colour was incorporated into the weekend of Platinum Jubilee celebrations. You might remember sort of we only saw them they were in offices overlooking Horse Guards Parade, so you kind of saw images of them through the window, and they weren't here that long. But yeah, I mean, I don't sort of know where we go from here in terms of any sort of reconciliation that there is. I think will have to be very much in private, and it would have to be, I think, probably initiated. It would have to be apologies from Harry and Meghan, I would have thought, for anything to happen.
And they want their apologies as well, don't they?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to happen, is it?
No, because we had all that public at the time of Spare, when Spare was published. Harry gave these interviews making all these demands about he wants this, that and the other. He will be here a lot over the coming months for his various court cases. So, you know, if the King wants to see him, there'll be plenty of opportunity. But
I'll tell you what will be interesting on that, Richard, is where they're going to stay, because as part of that Andrew piece I wrote on earlier on this week, I was told definitively that the tenancy on Frogmore hasn't run out yet, but it will run out next month. So that's why apparently he stayed at Frogmore when he came over recently. But anything else moving forward, he won't actually have a place to stay at in the UK.
Well, Buckingham Palace has got quite a few rooms.
Conveniently, there's some building work going on there as well. Even the King and Queen don't stay there, but will he have to stay at a hotel? Will he stay with a friend? I think it really emphasises that slightly rootless existence that he has in the UK. I mean, truthfully, everyone I speak to says they can't ever see Meghan coming back here. They really can't.
No, it really is.
But Harry will need to come back here for practical reasons.
And I think it really is an exile for Harry and Meghan now.
Meghan will have to come if she becomes president of the US one day. She'll have to. Yeah.
I don't want to sound too cynical, but I did think it was significant when we saw images this week of Harry at an event for ex-servicemen in the USA. I think it was in San Diego, and you know that coming just ahead of Trooping the Colour as well suggests to me that, you know, he's very keen to emphasise his military connections and that bond he feels. So I think it is very wounding for him.
Well, let's turn to a more positive note, Rebecca. And so what and who else can we expect to see at the event?
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. And one of the really key things is that the king will be the first reigning monarch to take the salute on horseback for 37 years, I think it is. Queen Elizabeth was the last one to take it on horseback in 1986, wasn't it?
My goodness, and I remember that like it was yesterday. I feel very old now.
Yeah, and obviously then she couldn't because of riding in public became more difficult as she got older, even though she rode in private right up until her death. And obviously Charles has always appeared on horseback in his role as Prince of Wales, but this will be his first time as king. And obviously we see the families and the carriages and the fly past. I love trooping. It's such a fantastic event.
And it's not just going to be King Charles on horseback. We're going to have Princess Anne, we're going to have Prince William, and also Prince Edward for the first time. So it's really going to be
quite nerve-wracking because you can't ultimately predict what a horse is going to do.
It is nerve-wracking, yeah. But with hundreds of soldiers, hundreds of musicians, it's going to be a feast of pageantry.
Well, actually, you're right, because when they did the last trooping, which was obviously tied in, as you said, with the Queen's Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee, one of the horses did bolt a bit. So it does show the, even for these well-trained animals, the unpredictability of it.
Oh my goodness! And Charles on horseback at 74. I mean, the horses are just such a big deal for the royal family, clearly, aren't they?
Look, this is amazing. I mean, when the Queen stops riding at Trooping the Colour, she was age 60. So for King Charles to start doing it again, age 74, it is remarkable. And I think it's quite brave, really. I mean,
it's going to be hot as well.
It's going to be very hot. Various soldiers fainted at the review last Saturday.
Yes, none of our viewers abroad would believe that it is Bahamas hot in Britain at the moment.
But it was last weekend, certainly. And I mean, King Charles is obviously a very experienced horseman, but he's had so many injuries over the years, playing polo and so forth. So fingers crossed it all goes to plan on Saturday.
He has really bad back as well. So sitting upright in that heat, in uniform, is going to be particularly gruelling, I think.
And just tell me quickly, is there a particular favourite horse?
The horse that King Charles will be riding was a gift from Canada. It was from the Mounties in Canada, called Noble, and it carries on that tradition because Queen Elizabeth used to ride a horse that was also a gift from Canada. So it emphasises that Commonwealth connection.
That's nice. And I believe you've got a story you like to tell about Prince Philip's horse riding days.
Well, this just emphasises, how important horses are to the royal family. And I remember when Prince Philip gave up riding at Trooping the Colour, which he did to a great age. I remember in my previous job running a story about how he was going to quit riding, and he was very unhappy about the story, I must say, and not
just trying to stay out of trouble and failing again, Richard.
Not because it wasn't true, which it was, but he was keen to emphasise that it was the horse that was retiring, not him. He felt the horse was getting too old to carry on, and he could have happily carried on. And as we know, the Queen carried on riding right into her 90s, so it's
I can imagine some of the names he must have called you in the palace that day.
For fans of our montages, make sure you check out this week's, which, funnily enough, has a trooping theme. Now, Rebecca, you've been back with your best friend, the Queen, this week, and on Sunday she turned heads for almost missing her own literary festival and the controversy of a jumpsuit.
Yeah, so Camilla was at her first ever Queen's Reading Room Literary Festival at Hampton Court. I mean, it was an amazing event, brought together some of the best writers in the business. I mean, literally everywhere you turned, there was a famous face in the literary world, but also, some famous people lending their support to the event. But she got held up by traffic and was meant to be at a reception to welcome these people to it. Fortunately, her husband decided to come along too, so he held the fort while she raced down the motorway. And then she kind of jumped out of her car and kind of hastily organised a meet and greet with Joanna Lumley, Dame Judi Dench, and was like apologising. So they shut the motor. It made me laugh because I thought, even they have the same problems as us. And she was wearing this really striking Anna Valentine blue jumpsuit. I loved it. There's been a big debate since as to whether, Was it a bit too cutting edge? Was it flattering? Was it not flattering? Con, you're the ex-fashion editor, Jo. You tell me what you think.
I'm a huge jumpsuit fan, and I love the colour. I think she looks amazing in that colour. I think it's a great look for her. I think she could have got away with a slimmer fit. I think it was just looked a little bit too big. But I think rock on in your jumpsuit.
In your 70s?
Absolutely. I thought it was fantastic. What about you, Richard?
Fashion queen Richard Eden.
I mean, it definitely grabbed a lot of attention.
Yeah, and look, I think it's a bold choice, and I think often we see some of her more sort of bold choices when she's carrying out engagements with the king. I think generally when she's with the king, she's a bit more sort of conservative, but I think in this occasion, because it was very much her event, her initiative, maybe that kind of sort of came across in her bold choice of outfit, no?
I think only in royal circles is a jumpsuit these days a bold choice, but I think it was fantastic.
Well, I suppose you never would have seen Queen Elizabeth wearing a jumpsuit, would you?
And more's the pity, Rebecca, more's the pity.
I tell you what, though, once one of my godchildren said to me, Rebecca, Auntie Rebecca, does the Queen ever wear jeans? It's obviously Queen Elizabeth. And I said, well, she wears trousers privately in Scotland, because I have seen pictures of it, but I don't think she ever wears jeans. And she went, no, she definitely wears jeans, because she'd seen this pair of jeans with a crown on the back and presumed that they were endorsed by the Queen, but actually it was Katie Price, the glamour model.
Oh, yeah, that's a altogether different market.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Queen Elizabeth did wear a jumpsuit, actually. I think it was during the war, when she was kind of
of course, she was a land girl.
Yeah, so, there is a bit of a tradition.
She rocked that look, didn't she?
And I think probably just some denim cut-offs when she's doing the gardening. That's what it was. But now, our current Queen, Rebecca, I keep hearing rumours about you, Camilla, and a tub of body butter. What's this all about?
You're such a wind-up merchant. You really are.
Look, I just want to know the facts, and I'm just exploring the story.
So I was with her yesterday at a garden party, a bee-themed garden party for the bee development organisation of which she's patron. And, putting a plug in for them, it's about encouraging beekeeping in developing countries to obviously help the environment, but give them a way out of poverty. So a very worthy event. And they brought over some of beekeepers from the Philippines, from India, from Zimbabwe. But the gentleman from Zimbabwe, she was tasting the honey, but she also, he kind of had this little thing in a pot. And she was a bit like, what's that? And he went, I'll slap it on you. And it was like a body butter, but it was very oily. And she was kind of, politely smiling, rubbing it in. And then when she left, he said, do you want to try some? And obviously, I couldn't resist trying some too, but it was incredibly oily. So oily, I was dropping my phone and my notebook. And one of the press officers lent me a wet wipe to kind of wipe my hands. And as she came round the corner, someone had lent her a wet wipe. So we both ended up in the middle of this garden party with wet wipes, trying to kind of clean our hands off it. So it was fun. It was a great event.
Well, you're definitely our queen bee, Rebecca.
Oh,
Richard.
You see what he did How long have you been planning that?
So smooth. The Edenites will love that. Well, it is montage time, and as promised, this week is a look back at some memorable moments from the Trooping the Colour over the years. that should have got you in the mood for this weekend's events. We'll be discussing those next week. And a reminder that if you enjoy our content, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our royal shows, like this one. Thanks as always to Rebecca and Richard, and of course to you for watching. We'll see you next time on Palace Confidential. Bye-bye.